Hi everyone, welcome back. We have been hearing a lot about how digital transformation is a thing. But guess what? Getting there is not an easy operation. If you take a look from the perspective of a company whose core business is not technology, they are far away from each other. And if they want to survive in today's world, well, they really got to get closer. So, what would be the ideal step that they should take in order to be successful? Should they become a tech company and build their solutions internally? Or should they just buy solutions from external vendors and customize them to their needs? You know, I'm sure there is no one size fits all answer, and there are multiple ways you can tackle this situation. But here is one thing that is common for us all: you've got to take an action. We are in 2024. Competitors are developing as fast as never seen in history. New tools and new technologies are popping out every single day. So if you don't do something, someone else will. So do you want to know how to deal with it? Then come with me. And to talk about this topic, I brought with me David Tober, who has a large experience in different industries and has worked for big names like Kodak, RELX, Metro, and also founded some other companies. So, David, thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us today. And I really appreciate it. So, would you like to briefly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, by the way, Bruno, for inviting me to this wonderful podcast. By the way, a very interesting topic today. Introduction about myself. I see myself as somebody who likes to keep things going. Indeed, saw both worlds from startups to enterprises, the differences in how they operate. So I'm very much looking forward to explore this topic with you today.
Yeah, man, I really, really appreciate that. So by like having such a very big experience in wholesale, retail, and even in Fortune 500 companies, I believe you have seen everything in terms of digitalization, right?
I I would be fair to say yes, absolutely. And it's always fascinating how when you compare those two worlds, right, startups and enterprise, how one always assumes the grass is greener on the other side, right? You know how it is. I mean, you yourself have a lot of work experience in the large companies, in the town halls. We need to be faster, we need to be more agile, we need to iterate more quick. The wish to become again this smaller enterprise which is able on a very frugal mindset to develop very quickly. And then you have those small enterprises or those small startups who are like, damn it, we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to iterate the hell out of it, you know and once they find product market fit, that's usually when they start becoming this enterprise development, right? Because then it's about consistent iteration rather than complete new reinvention or evolution. So yeah, I always like those two. So it's both. I assuming that it's better on the other side. So yeah, I think I have seen both of them.
Yeah, that is amazing. But since we're talking about like large enterprises, let's really focus on the non-digital native ones. I mean, those who have been founded like before the year 2000. If you take a look at the softwares that they use for the critical operations, they are like really old, right? From one side, very solid, but from the other side, old and outdated. How do you think we should deal with it nowadays?
Wow, that's Bruno. That's quite a lot of questions in one question. So let's try to break it down a little bit. So whenever we speak about a legacy, the one reminder I would like to put into everybody's mind is since when actually SAP exists, right? So if you look into the timeline since when SAP was established, you're just thinking about their revenue figures, and then you also assume, okay, how many installations or licenses or whatsoever they have sold at a given time during the years. And when you start thinking about it, it's more than a technical legacy, it's a process legacy. I think this is when we really start speaking about, okay, what companies are actually lacking. It's the way of operating in an analog world. Funny enough, I have a metaphor for that one. So every now and then I work with some companies, just so to understand how they are working, or maybe advisory a little bit. And then they are pulling out those diagrams from 2005 or 2010, or 2010 is already pretty good. And I'm making this joke and I'm saying, guys, you know your analog business very well. And they're like either making like this, ha ha, or huh. The worst things are the ones who say, I don't know what you mean. So I think when we are speaking about legacy, is more like this legacy of how companies operated, right? I mean, if you think also about technology in itself, it's nothing else than the representation of business logic, right? I mean, this is what usually a lot of teams underestimate. It's like, yeah, you can have fancy tech, but if the process is, to say it politely, suboptimal, you're going to have bad software. It doesn't matter how well it's built,
That's
right?
true.
So to your point, how what we consider as legacy, it's the legacy of understanding how companies operate. In 2016, 17, I moved to the wonderful city of Düsseldorf. And I was living in Amsterdam and working for RELX, or basically the Fortune 500 firm we mentioned. And I went to the Deutsche Bank, which I haven't seen in ages because I was living there in the Netherlands, and wanted to change my address. So I went to this office and she said, yeah, sure, we are going to be able to change your address. For that, I'm going to need to take what you just mentioned. I need to write it on a piece of paper. She wrote it down. I need to sign this piece of paper. She's going to send this piece of paper that I just signed and confirmed my new address back to the headquarters, where from there, somebody's going to type it in, and then I'm going to get a confirmation via mail in order to confirm my new address. First of all, it was not possible to, of course, do it online because I was not having an account. Second, it was not possible to do it via telephone for whatever reasons or whatever safety reason. So what was happened is there is a receptionist working on site with you and basically filling out the paperwork. And this goes back into enterprise. Those kind of things only happen in an enterprise because you have a legacy that allows you to stay fat. Processes that are far away from any need, from any customer centricity, towards a justification of work that somebody needs to do something in order to please in any certain way a customer. So anyway, this is a little bit what I see with that one. Also going back to your initial question. So yeah, it's mainly process legacy more than technical legacy because iterating new ideas is rather something that can be swiftly done. And the question is, of course, how do you introduce new processes on top of existing ones? Well, but I'm a big fan of, this is a little bit of a longer answer, I'm a big fan of destruction in order to create something new, because sometimes you cannot build on top. It's simply not possible, Bruno. So in that sense, if you want to get rid of legacy, literally get rid of legacy. You need to destroy something to create something new.
Yeah, 100%. And I totally agree with you. And this transition part is not very easy, right? Like companies tend to suffer a lot to really bring new software on
Absolutely.
like to really run and do everything there. But do you think that this new software, like nowadays, should they really build it internally? Or should they also just create some external company that can just focus on building what they need nowadays, like with today's necessity?
So I think my opinion on that one is, and what I've seen working in the past very well is build it until you know what you need. So build it internally. So that doesn't mean you need to build a whole ERP system. It doesn't mean you need to build a whole customer data platform. But it means building and iterating and simulating processes as real as possible to understand what you need. Because too many times we are having discussions in rooms on processes, diagrams, or whatsoever, done by a very small, limited amount of people, right? If you have something running, and even if the functionality is not there, but allowing you to understand how mature is the organization. Because otherwise, you're always going to end up with the big names and the big brands with the big marketing budgets. When we have introduced for one of the last companies I worked for a customer data platform, customer data platform for everybody. Very interesting. Allows you to connect the touch points from email marketing, from on-site traffic, on-site page personalization, and some other very fancy things. And we, of course, like every good company, we selected the company with the most features. Complete waste of time, because the organization was not ready to leverage these kind of functionalities. It was not able to actually fully utilize these possibilities that were given. So you have functionalities and features out there, and for which you also, of course, pay money, although you're not able to implement them or basically fully leverage the capabilities. So I always assume build and simulate as much and as close to the customer as possible. And then once you know how your process is going to look like, then you can look and go, the market suits you, but not before that one. So
Yep.
basically moving away from theory.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And actually I agree. But then I just wonder, like, is it really realistic to those companies who are really non-digital native, right? So they are not tech companies, they are like focused on retail, and they're based on older business model, just like you mentioned. Do you think this is really realistic to this large enterprises that are far away from being a tech company?
I absolutely think yes, because there's nothing more motivational and aspirational than saying, Bruno, we know we are analog and we want to become a digital company, right? First of all, it shows the grand scale of change they are aware of today, where they want to be tomorrow. That's motivational, right? I mean, think about yourself, right? If you are maybe mid 25, mid 20s, you're beginning 30, you're looking for something where you can crawl your nails in and be like, there is something going to move. This is not another e-commerce optimization initiative where you're going to need to improve conversion rate by 0.1%. This is setting up a new foundation. So I think companies who are saying, are we really in the position of hire talent? The ambition sets the talent that you are able to attract. And already by having a low maturity gives you a big benefit in attracting people who are not afraid of challenges, who are not afraid of going the extra mile. So I think it is ambitious, and it is, I think, very admirable. So I think it's definitely realistic, but you need to play with the factor of the motivation of the goal. And then, of course, there comes the challenge of how to get there. That's a completely different conversation. But I think any aspirational goal is a goal worth pursuing. And if it means changing the business model, absolutely.
Actually, that's a very good point because nowadays technology is so strong and it has changed so many different companies that I do believe that this shift from analog to digital is extremely important, even though some businesses are might be far away from tech, but that's exactly the reason why they should be closer to tech nowadays, right? So
Yeah,
what do you think this shift means, especially for this big enterprise traditional companies?
that they are being chased. That they are going to be. I worked for 13 years in tech. I've worked the first 7, 8 years in my life when I was going into this field, where it was business demanding features from IT, and it was always this rabbit hole, where the IT was always considered as slow, as not being able to fulfill the demands and everything that comes with it. And now what I'm seeing with this shift in technology and the possibility is that the technology teams internally are saying, yeah, but it's pretty basic, guys. And they're like, and the marketing folks like, yeah, what do you mean with basic? I mean, like, yeah, this feature comes natively as part of this tool we already have. But how do we actually make personalized campaigns based on that? And then you're like, oh. Then you see the shift where more and more IT teams are starting to chase the business stakeholders, where more and more IT teams are showcasing the possibilities. Because on the business side, what has happened over many years is that you have a very clear silo segregation on responsibilities. So, for example, logistics, warehouse management, software was usually within one department. right? And then you have another department which is responsible for something else. But there was only one department that took care of all of those, and that was IT. And now IT is demanding, hey, look, guys, if we do this, then we can do this and this and this, which is asking on a business side a complete new level of coordination. So I think we are going to see more and more how IT teams are going to ask for more ambitious goals because of the possibilities that are now there, which have not been there years ago. I mean, talking about legacy, what I thought a couple of years ago is hot shit is today already like, oh, boring for a few. But this is the nature of the beast, which makes it also so exciting.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say that this is a very wonderful time to be alive. Like there's so many things, there's so much potential for companies to grow nowadays that I'm really excited about it. But one thing that I put myself in the shoes of someone that is running a very large enterprise,
Yeah,
and then they started with an internal business, like a tech, small little tech company within their business, so they can focus on driving the company forward. And
yeah.
then they have this idea of outsourcing. And then comes the question like, what should really be built internally and what should the outsourcing company do?
A lot of change in large organization is like a New Year's resolution. I'm gonna lose weight. I'm gonna eat healthy. I'm never gonna eat junk food anymore. I'm gonna do the extremes 5 times a week and so on. So those decisions that are taken are usually very binary. All and it's like a poker game. It's like we're going all in on the strategy. And there's little maneuverability and space to basically do this thing gradual. So what you smartly asked, Bruno, is how do we find a balancing act? Because if you have this ambition of digitizing your business, that I think let's look into each other's eye, everybody. If you do it all at once, yeah, you could literally quit your job because you're not going to be successful. I mean, nobody doing all at once at the 1st of Jan is going to be successful. But you need to find this balancing act. And this balancing act is to understand where is cash coming from? Where is money coming from? And you need to understand that these are the teams you need to start hiring first. The closer to the cash, the closer to the revenue, the closer to the customer, the closer your priority. Because this is what is going to differentiate your business. Saying, this is what we have observed how they use our product. This is how they use our service. This is all knowledge that is going to drive further change in how you operate. These are the first roles. These are the first roles as well that need to be close to your core business, either in the ideally same time zone, in a close proximity, where you can facilitate interviews, where you can facilitate get-to-knows, where you can facilitate observations. It's very hard sometimes to measure those, but these are the roles that define the continued evolution of your business. Everything else, uptime, how is the performance of the website, you can literally, I mean, this is a tissue, take a piece of paper and contractually agree how it should run, right? Operational KPIs. Not saying that these should not be internalized at one point. Well, I'm not saying that. But pick your priorities. Start with what gets you money. These are the first to hire internally. And everything else outside, which is also mostly going to be commodity services on operational excellence.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, the company should really focus internally on the main strategies that they can really change, right? Like really the things that they can drive forward, they should focus on that. And everything that I'm not saying that everything else is not important. I'm just saying that everything else is like a commodity, like you just mentioned, right? So it's something that it is important, it is there, but it's not going to be, there's not going to be any added extra value to the customer or to the business if they do it internally. So
Yeah,
they should do that kind of thing externally, right?
indeed, indeed. And to add to your point, right? What is for you commodity is for another company their core business, right? Let it sink in, right? If my goal comes from anything related to, for example, simply talk about e-commerce, why should I do the operational excellence at the beginning of my journey internally, right? If it's somebody else's bread and butter who has the technology, the teams, the culture, or whatever, in order to attract highly talented people to do this day in and day out, right? So how do I get somebody else's bread and butter as into my core business, right? And I think this is, especially at the beginning of a journey, definitely a question to ask.
Yeah, 100% with you there. But then let's put back there in the shoes of someone who
Sure.
is running this company, and they came with the internal team. The internal team is working, they got some externals. But then to have externals working with us, there are multiple ways of doing that, right? What are the ways available nowadays to work with these externals?
Yeah, sure. So you have various models. So just we have the on-site model, which is funny and interesting enough. What we are seeing is now coming more and more back within organizations that they're asking for physical presence. So basically, getting either people hired internally or basically consultants external to work with the internal teams on site. Then you have the nearshore model, right, which is approximate within the same time zone. You have a team distributed somewhere geographically that is going to be able to cover the same time zones and work together. Then you have the offshore model, which is basically somewhere in a very different time zone. I think for most European companies, working together with companies from Asia with a time difference of 5 to 6 hours. You of course leverage a lot of cost benefits, at least on a piece of paper. This is how it's presented. And then you have hybrid model combinations. Hybrid model combinations are usually very much present if we think about organizations that operate globally, that you want to have models such as follow the sun, right? So depending on where the customer wakes up, that if there is an uptime or a performance issue, that a team locally within the given time zone is going to be able to satisfy the need. So this is just a little bit of a glimpse on the various models. On-site, then we have nearshore, we have offshore, then we of course have many hybrid models, plus the dimension, am I going to do this model internally, or am I going to do this model externally? And then we have a 2x2 matrix, also a 4x2 matrix, where you're going to be able to play around with this.
And there is no right or wrong, right? Like there is
No.
always a specific moment that maybe nearshore is better, or another kind of software that offshore is better, right?
Yeah, so this goes back into this topic what we had about what to start first with, right? If I want to be customer first, call me black and white thinking here. If it's customer first, where's the customer? This is where the teams need to be in a nearshore model, the furthest away if you think about it. Because if you're gonna do and schedule a custom interview, the customer is gonna tell you, guys, I have time at 5 p.m. in the evening, and you're like, sure, we are all in Europe, that's fine. So of course you could say, okay, yeah, but the offshore team is also going to run this model and that's going to be for them, I don't know, 10 p.m. in the evening. Sure, they're going to make it work. I believe that. But how motivating is it for somebody at 10 p.m. in the evening to work with that one? And of course you can say, yeah, but we have a contract and we are paying for those hours. No,
Yeah, but it doesn't really
it
make sense, right?
no, no. It goes also to the basic factor of a person, right? At one point you are done. Like the person already started way before you, right? And then basically you start ask them to stay later, and they also have, I mean, it's not like we're all singles, right? We have friends and family around us, so there's also some things there. So this is what I'm saying. it's it's a matter of, if you have a customer interaction, your teams need to be able to be in the given time zone, also culturally fit in that certain set, in order to absorb the knowledge and the insights and bring them internally. And one thing that I want to highlight very specifically here is, When I'm speaking culturally, what I mean culturally is that people need to understand the cultures they operate in. I think we are putting too little emphasis on understanding each other's ways of working. When I was put in charge of teams offshore, right, nobody from the company gave any training how to operate with teams all around the world. You have to put yourself into the responsibility of upskilling yourself, learning what drives their values, learning how they operate. Right? It's an invest that you do from yourself because in the end, it's people you work with. How many people get this responsibility and never get this training? Right? So this is also a question then, how do you guarantee success or failure in working in different talent sourcing models or just in general engagement models, right? If you don't know the culture, you don't know what to expect and you don't know how to operate.
Exactly. It must be really complicated. Actually, to operate an offshore team must be not easy, right? Because they can be a couple of hours away or maybe even on the other side of the world. Like, do you basically just talk to them per email?
No, of course you do various things, right? You have of course your regular ceremonies, and I don't want to use the word agile in this interview nearly at all because I think it's a such dry topic, which I think consulting firms benefited the most out of this term. Um, but of course you do have your regular sessions. But let me give you a funny insight. When I was working with an offshore team on a business application, a CRM application that we were developing, and in order, I was only able to explain them the business model because the next store we had close to the office, they need to fly for 2.5 hours to see the location. So you're like, I'm trying to work with the team together. You know what I mean? Of course, you can articulate and present and do slides and so on, but how much business knowledge and understanding are you able to convey if you use PowerPoint slides, documents, and so on in order to convey?
Not really easy.
No, no, Bruno. You're not gonna you're gonna explain the theory, right? It's like the theory of dating, right? Yeah, be confident, right? Yeah, it's like you're able to explain it theoretically, but in the end, it's like, but when you go out in the real world, it's different, right? I mean, it's simple as I would articulate.
True. Nothing better than seeing it in real life, like operating, so people can have like a real idea what they are working with, right?
Plus, I am biased already. I'm only gonna tell you what is important for me, what I have seen, what I have observed. So my knowledge I'm giving to you is already not the truth because I have my priorities for my teams, applications, for my roadmap, and so on. I'm going to tell you what I want you to tell. And I'm not saying that anybody is malicious or whatever has a bad meaning or intention. It's just you phrase the information you have under the context of what matters to you, right? Which again,
Makes
if I'm
sense.
trying to explain to you how I operate my teams or how the goals I have deducted is what I have seen and observed, which is not always going to be the reflection of it, which is a wonderful metaphor why there are so many newspapers exist, right? Different people, different expertise and observation.
Yeah, that is really amazing. Now you touched on a point that I'm really curious, and I think it's going to be very good for our people listening to us right now. What piece of advice would you give to a traditional enterprise and also to those who are founding their own companies right now that want to stand out in such a competitive market in 2024 and even beyond?
So there's going to be some, let's say, analytical advice, rational advice, and there's going to be a little bit of a personal experience.
Hmm.
When we are speaking about what I can advise is going with price as an argument to differentiate is not a differentiator. you basically become a viable option because you do it cheaper and because you assume that you're going to be able to operate on a lower operating model. Fine. I mean, going via price is not usually a solution. So then it puts the question then, okay, what should you do different? There are so many industries out there that are still working on an outdated business model. And I think when we're looking into consulting in general, I think we're going to see a big shift. I think we're going to see at one point a big shift because the time and material model is not a model that puts a lot of skin in the game for the person providing the people, right? You as a manager, Bruno, in general, anybody who's listening to this, you present a project, you present an initiative, your skin is in the board, your name is in the board, your premise, your promise is in the board, your budget is signed off. You engage with a top tier consulting firm. The firm tells you, we're going to give you 10 people for this kind of a rate. And it's fair. You use them however you wish. You use them in your priorities. We are operating fully agile. We are operating fully flexible. But it doesn't guarantee you any commitment. It doesn't guarantee you anything, of course, because everything is fluid. But if something goes wrong, and believe me, we all been there, something is going to go wrong, it's you who's on the line. It's the person who signed off who's on the line. So what we're going to see more and more in this consulting area is value-based components, performance-based components that are going to demand from certain firms that they're going to put also their skin in the game in order to be successful. So this is the first thing. I would always suggest a performance-based component. That can also, by the way, happen with internal colleagues, where you say if X gets achieved under certain time or budget or whatsoever, a certain part of the, let's say, free budget is something that could be distributed to the teams, team members who have contributed. Of course, it's a monetary motivation. let's be honest. And is it the best way to motivate? No, because the people are going to tell you everybody should be intrinsically motivated. But in the end, Bruno, everybody got bills to pay.
True that.
And as nice as it sounds in books, and people should be motivated, intrinsic, and so on. Yeah. You see me nodding. In the end, man, people have bills to pay. That's item number one. Item number two is for people and companies who are seeking to build something new, revolutionize their startups, revolutionize their industries, or build up something completely new. Trust is not a two-way ticket. Trust is, in most cases, one directional. And what we assume is that we trust somebody. Essentially, we trust somebody. It doesn't mean the other person trusts us. I have been in the fortunate situation of working with many wonderful people around the world. Some startups that are highly successful right now, some companies that are highly successful, and trust is great until there's a contract. Let it sink in, because the moment you start bringing in the contractual obligation to what was discussed, things very quickly change. So I would suggest also here that trust is a very fragile currency. The problem is you cannot measure it, you cannot count on it, you cannot rely on it. It's what both people deem fair at one given point in time. And the third thing is that I would recommend is that they start looking into who they are themselves. Because especially at the beginning, when you're looking to build something new, you're gonna want to have the brutal, honest truth the whole time where you are. Right? I mean, you're doing this wonderful engagement right now also for people to get to know you. And I have the pleasure of not being here so people can get to know me a bit better. But that's the currency you deal with, right? If you want to change something, people are going to want to know whether you are actually able, who's going to be a person who's going to be able to pull this off themselves. Are you driven enough? Are you motivated enough? Are you hungry enough? What are you in order to drive this change forward? So what does it mean for me as a person for me is my values, who I'm standing for. So these are the three components: is who am I myself, assuming that trust is a currency that is hard to measure, and I think I just spoke about that one, and that it's in the end it's also about cash, right? I mean, I know it's not a popular opinion I'm going to share here, but in the end, you need to guarantee that what you're going to build, that people are not going to be needed to be worrying, right? How performant is a person worried about their rent? How performant is a person who's not going to be certain whether they're going to be able to have the job in a couple of days? Right? You have luxury in success, or the benefit of success, if you have a peace of mind that allows the people to operate. So there needs to be a certain ground. I surely mixed something up, Bruno. But I think those would be for my own personal experience, what I would see is that what I would put as the mandatory or the recommendations maybe from my side at this point.
Yeah, perfect, man. I highly appreciate it. Like, I think it was very, very amazing. Not only your answers but basically your participation, your insights, and your trust for being here today. Yeah, thank you once more.
It's fun for having me. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, perfect. So that's it, folks. Thank you for being here with me today. And if you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe and don't miss a thing. So stay tuned and stay ahead.